Hey, it's NPR's Book of the Day. I'm Andrew Limbaugh. Before we get into today's show, I want to tell you about a new offering we have here at Book of the Day. We have now launched Book of the Day Plus, which is a new way to support our work here at NPR. When you sign up, you get access to a special feed where you can listen to our new episodes sponsor-free. Nothing is changing about our regular show, but Book of the Day Plus is another way to help us keep giving you the books coverage you love. So please do sign up. We really appreciate it. You can find out more at plus.npr.org/bookoftheday. All right, on to today's show. I remember hearing about today's novel at a meeting with some publicists and being both confused and intrigued because it somehow ties together the following themes: immigration, whales, the singer Pitbull, Moby Dick, impersonations, and the movie Scarface. The book is called Say Hello to My Little Friend by Janine Capot-Crusett, and she talked to NPR's Sasha Pfeiffer about using her hatred of the movie Scarface to explore young men in Miami and their desperate need to become something. They just don't know what that something is. That's ahead.
This message comes from Apple Card. You earn up to 3% daily cash on every purchase. That's 3% on products at Apple, 2% on all other Apple Card with Apple Pay purchases, and 1% on anything you buy with your titanium Apple Card or virtual card number. Visit apple.co/card calculator to see how much you can earn. Apple Card issued by Goldman Sachs Bank USA, Salt Lake City branch. Subject to credit approval. Terms apply.
If you've seen the 1983 movie Scarface, you may remember an iconic line by Al Pacino. He says, "Say hello to my little friend." Say hello to my little friend. That same line is now the title of a new book by Janine Capot-Crusett. And in both her book and the movie, the city of Miami is a central character. The novel tells the story of a young Cuban exile named Izzy, who's trying to make a life for himself while also trying to figure out a mystery from his past. Author Janine Capot-Crusett is with us. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Sasha.
We're glad to have you. Your book is not a violent crime drama like Scarface, but the movie is a major theme of the book, and it factors into how your main character sees the world. What is your relationship with the movie Scarface, and why make it such a big part of your novel?
I just feel like Scarface has always existed. The movie came out around the time I was born. I think I might have seen it for the first time at age far too young, maybe age 9 or 10, which is not the age you should be watching a movie like that.
Very gory, very heavy-duty movie.
Yeah, my relationship with the movie is very much a love-hate, probably more towards hate. I think my goal with this book was, in part, if anyone's never seen Scarface, they can read this book and then never have to actually watch it because they got everything they needed to know. But I went off to college and found out that Scarface was kind of a touchstone for folks about what Miami was and what Cuban Americans were. And I found that deeply troubling.
Troubling because it felt like unfair stereotypes of Miami and Cubans?
And then on top of that, for me, Scarface is a comedy. It's just because it's so ridiculous. And then when people take the movie seriously, I'm always really confused by that because like Al Pacino's accent, for instance, doesn't sound even remotely Spanish or Cuban to our ears, right? So I that's part of what the book takes up, is sort of pointing out all the places where the movie is very silly and playfully engaged with the film that way.
The main character, Izzy, has been trying to make a living by impersonating the Miami singer Pitbull, but for legal reasons, that comes to an end. So he's trying to become a real-life Tony Montana, Al Pacino's character in Scarface. There is this running theme in your book of young men in Miami who have lost their way or who can't find their way. It's tough on men. The book kind of portrays a lot of them as ridiculous. Why? What does that tell us about your view of Miami and what it does to men?
Oh, man. I think I was interested in seeing the ways that people sort of think they've got to become something, but they don't exactly know what that something is. And I think that's a quality or a characteristic of growing up in Miami. I think and I can only speak for myself, but it's my experience as a young woman, the answer was sort of education and pushing yourself really hard and going to school and going to college and really excelling in that world. And that was sort of your way through or a way out. And I didn't see that the same for guys. There seemed to be bigger temptations, bigger risks. And really, I couldn't figure out Izzy until I figured out Lolita, the captive orca whose sort of his story gets filtered through. And the novel, actually begins with her and her capture from her home.
Let's talk about Lolita. As you said, she's a whale, an orca. She's been living for decades, tragically, in a cramped tank at a Miami aquarium. We also learn what she's thinking as she swims around, and basically she's trying not to lose her mind. What did you want to do by making a whale a central character?
I don't know what I wanted to do. I think she sort of emerged. When I started writing this novel in 2013, it was Izzy's story, and it definitely was coming from a place of like satire, sarcasm, a sense of like, if the publishing industry wants Scarface light, why don't I just give it to them? And it wasn't until I realized that so much of the way the novel was going to be told was through the voice of Miami, but specifically Miami's water. I know it sounds a little wacky.
There's a climate change element to this. Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely, right. The water is coming for the city, and anywhere that water can go, the story can go. And that led me to the Miami Aquarium. It was a place I visited as a child, a place that I think is deeply connected to a sense of Miami childhood for a lot of people. And putting her in the book, she was a real surprise, but she was sort of the key to unlocking the whole thing. And it's one of the moments in the writing of the book that just felt like, one, the story was really alive, and to some extent, very much out of my control.
We should emphasize here, Lolita was real. Lolita died relatively recently, I think while you were in the process of about to publish your book. And I'm wondering, because you became, I assume, attached to her in a way by making her a character and getting to her mind, how did you feel when you learned out that she had passed away?
I was really devastated. I don't know how much of a right I had to feel devastated about it, but I had spent many years trying to think what it must be like to have that sort of existence. And it didn't start to crystallize for me as an experience until early pandemic, when we were all in deep isolation. My early pandemic months, I was completely alone in a house. I was not living in an area where I felt safe. I was just sort of like moving around the house in circles all day, sort of going a little wacky. And I sort of made that connection, this thing that I'd been struggling with in the novel, like that experience was something that would inform how I would write those Lolita chapters. I mean, orca are animals that can swim like 80 to 100 miles a day. Through the research and writing of this book, I would say they are more intelligent than we are. But I just hope that it brings awareness to the plight of captive marine mammals everywhere, and that the people who are holding these animals realize they're not there for our edutainment or for our entertainment at all. And that I hope that, if anything, the novel is in some ways a memorial to her.
The human main character, Izzy, he's a migrant from Cuba. His mother died while trying to cross the Straits of Florida. That part turns into a really fascinating mystery with quite a surprising answer to what unfolded. You yourself were born in Miami to Cuban exiles. How much of your own life story is in this novel?
Very little, and I think that's a reaction to my last novel, where people sort of conflated me with the main character. And I think this time I was like, I'm going to make somebody so different from me that it couldn't possibly come from my life story. And yet here we are, right? Like those experiences still find a way in. But it's mostly in the small things, the sort of asides, the neighborhood that Izzy goes to in his first sort of like search for the folks who've been on the raft with him, the first people he runs into. That's my neighborhood, Palm Springs North, shout out to PSN. So those kinds of things, like those small moments.
It's clear you know Miami very intimately. And in some ways, it reads a bit like a love letter to Miami. In other ways, a harsh critique of Miami. Would you say you have a conflicted relationship with the city?
Well, I mean, I think any place that you love, right? James Baldwin said this much more eloquently than I am right now, but any place that you love, you reserve the right to be critical of it as well. It's definitely a sense of goodbye to Miami. I know when I started writing this book, I really wanted to be done writing about Miami. This is my fourth book. I think the difference here is like all my other books have been set in Miami, at least to some extent. This one, I take Miami on as a subject, right? Not just a setting. And I just wanted to be like everything I've ever wanted to say about this place. I wanted in one spot as an elegy, as a goodbye, but also as an archive, as a city that'll be underwater in my lifetime. I just want people to be able to read this and say, oh, look at what we lost. But any kind of affection or love has to come with a side of criticism. My Venus is in Virgo, so I show my love is through criticism.
That's Janine Capot-Crusette. Her new novel is Say Hello to My Little Friend. It's out now. Thank you, Janine.
Thank you, Sasha.
When voters talk during an election season, we listen. We ask questions, we follow up, and we bring you along to hear what we learned. Get closer to the issues, the people, and your vote at the NPR Elections Hub. Visit npr.org/elections.
This message comes from NPR sponsor Sony Pictures Classics presenting Wicked Little Letters, a new comedy starring Olivia Colman and Jessie Buckley based on an outrageously true scandal. Wicked Little Letters starts Friday in New York and Los Angeles, everywhere April 5th, only in theaters. Support for NPR and the following message come from Proven Winners Color Choice Shrubs, who believes that plants and gardening are for everyone. With over 25 years of developing, trialing, and testing some of the most recognized flowering shrubs and evergreens on the market, Proven Winners Color Choice makes it easy to transform dull yards into vibrant, colorful landscapes. Ready to spruce up your yard this spring? Proven Winners Color Choice created the Gardening Simplified Landscape Guide to help you get started with tried and true elements of good planting design. Identify the roles you want new plants to play in your outdoor space, like ground covers, climbers, or attracting pollinators. Then browse garden plans and see which layouts and plants can bring your vision to life. Proven Winners Colored Choice Shrubs are available in the distinctive white containers at garden centers nationwide. Learn more at provenwinnerscolorchoice.com/NPR.